pandemic has been a litmus test for alliances. It has separated friends from partners. You see, a partnership is based on terms and conditions, but friendship is unconditional. And one country is treading this fine line with India. And we have to say, it is not doing a good job with it. We're talking about the United States of America. Is it a friend or is it a partner? Washington sees India as a key ally in the Indo-Pacific. It turns on the charm offensive when needed. Like on climate change, the US needs India's support for climate action, so it dispatched John Kerry to woo New Delhi. But when the shoe is on the other foot, Washington changes tack. Let's look at 4 in the last couple of months and ask ourselves, are these things you would expect from an ally? Number one, the ban on the export of vaccine raw materials. We know that India is the biggest vaccine maker in the world, but to make these vaccines, you need raw materials. And most of these come from the United States. But here's the problem. The US has banned the export of these items. Back in February, Joe Biden invoked the US Defense Production Act. It's a wartime law. It diverted all resources to America's vaccine production. So none of it was available for export. Now, Washington insists that there is no explicit embargo, but the supply of 35 key ingredients has been disrupted. India has raised these issues multiple times with the US. Ambassador Taranjeet Singh Sandhu flagged it as soon as Joe Biden invoked the act. Foreign Minister S. Jaishankar raised it during his phone call with Antony Blinken. But the US response has been disappointing. Joe Biden has said he understands India's needs. But in the middle of shortages and deaths, understanding does not count for much. Also think back to the HCQ craze of 2020, hydroxychloroquine. It was India that exported 50 million tablets to the US. So this was America's chance to repay that favor. Instead, Washington chose vaccine nationalism. Action number 2. The US has put India on the currency manipulator watch list. What does that mean? Let me explain. India's Reserve Bank has been accused of foul play in the foreign exchange market. The RBI purchased dollar worth 5% of the GDP. The US has set the threshold at 2%. So how has the market reacted to this move? Most experts have called it ludicrous. India's Commerce Secretary said there is no economic logic to America's move. In fact, if anyone is manipulating the currency, it is the United States itself. The Federal Reserve has kept the interest rates so low that capital is flowing out of America, and these funds are flooding the Indian market and affecting the rupee. Action number 3, American adventurism in India's exclusive economic zone. We've already told you the story. The US Navy sailed its warship near India's Lakshadweep Island. There was no warning. There was no diplomatic outreach, only a deadpan statement after the event. The US Navy apparently wanted to check India's excessive maritime claims. And remember, these were peaceful waters with no cross-claims of sovereignty. Action number 4, America's overreach into India's domestic issues. Last month, the State Department published its human rights report. It said the situation in India was deteriorating. This week, they published another report. This is on religious freedoms. America's own record on protecting the rights of minorities is abysmal. It continues to give its Western allies a pass, but when it comes to India, interference is the norm. So what is Joe Biden's endgame here? Why is he testing his best bet against China? Well, a lot of it could be attributed to domestic pressure. The Democrats are pushing Biden to pursue a more hawkish India policy because in strategic terms, this approach makes no sense whatsoever. If Biden wants to chain the dragon, he will need India's help. There are no two ways about it. And New Delhi has already taken the first step. After decades of non-alliance, India is now flirting with the idea of formalizing the Quad. So New Delhi is putting its money on the US. But this confused messaging from Washington is not helping at all. So what can Joe Biden do now? For starters, he could send over those vaccine raw materials. India needs them to hasten vaccine production. A sign of goodwill here would smooth some of the apprehensions. Joe Biden has a decision to make. Friend or partner? It is exactly as simple as it sounds.